All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sketch things that are in radian measure onto our circle, because you want to get used to the degree equivalent and the radian equivalent. So we said that 180 degrees was equal to pi. So over here is going to be pi. Over here obviously is 0. So if I just split that in half, up here is going to be pi over 2. So I've got 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. Those are my 90-degree angles. So 90, 180, 270. These marks right here, the 45-degree angle, is cutting this in half. So this would be pi over 4. So I've got 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. You can see that these ones we still hit, it's just that they reduce down, because this would be 2 pi over 4. 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2 pi over 2. Now our other measures are our 30, 60 degree measures. So 30, 60, 90, all the other tick marks in there. 30 degrees is pi over 6. 30 goes into 180 6 times. So this is going to be pi over 6. So 1 pi over 6, this one's going to be 2 pi over 6, which is really pi over 3 if I reduce it down. So 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, this would be 3 pi over 6, so this would be 4 pi over 6. And of course I can reduce that down again to 2 pi over 3. 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6. That one won't reduce down. Here is 6 pi over 6. Then we have 7 pi over 6. Again, that one doesn't reduce down. Here we would have 8 pi over 6, which is 4 pi over 3 if I reduce that down. 9 pi over 6. This one here would be 10 pi over 6, which would reduce to 5 pi over 3. And then we have 11 pi over 6. And then, of course, here we would be 12 pi over 6, which is the same thing as 2 pi, but normally we say that's 0 instead of 2 pi. We would get there eventually, though, if I kept going around 2 pi, 4 pi, and so forth. So that's what your circle is going to look like for our regular measures, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and 30, 60, 90 degrees. And so what they want you to do is sketch where that angle is in standard position. So 7 pi over 4 is way over here. You're going to grab this line, it's going to come all the way around, and you're going to drop it right there at 7 pi over 4. So my angle right here, and go from there. If we look at the next one, we're doing 5 pi over 6. So pi over 6 is 30 degrees. We've got 1 pi over 6. Here would be 2 pi over 6. Here would be 3 pi over 6. Here would be 4 pi over 6. Here would be 5 pi over 6. And so I'm going this way around. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to drop it right there, 5 pi over 6. So I'm skipping the 45 degree angles, but otherwise I'm counting every hash mark, 30, 60, 90, so forth. On the next one, we want to sketch 2 pi over 3. We can get denominators of 3 by reducing the pi over 6 ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that so that the denominator is 6, because every 30 degrees, pi over 6. So 2 pi over 3 would be 4 pi over 6. So again, this is 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, and so 4 pi over 6 or 2 pi over 3 is right there. I grab that, pull it up there, and that's going to be my angle that is equal to 2 pi over 3. So if you just remember those standard ones, here we've got pi over 2, here we've got pi over 4, and then these ones are each pi over 6 as I go around. And then of course some of them I can reduce down into lower terms.